Hello and welcome back to Raise a Glass, the podcast where we talk about the stories and storytellers that shape us. My name is Eric Lintela.
And I am Hunter Danson.
And normally at this point we talk about what's in our glass and what we're raising one out for and what we're pouring one out for this week. But if you want to know the answer to those questions, listen to the previous episode. Because what we're doing right now is a part 2 about Hunter's musical journey with the guitar. And the guitarists, the style, the instruments, the sounds that have and continue to shape him. And let me once again highly encourage you to check out the previous episode. We talked about people like Tommy Shaw and Paul Kossoff and Robert Johnson and Jimi Hendrix, among others. And that was the proving ground, or maybe the beginning stages for Hunter and his journey. Obviously, he still listens to them; they still continue to impact him and shape him. But in this episode, we're going to be leaning more into the last few years as Hunter's made that decision as he's climbing this mountain, as he'd hit that plateau for a few years to take this step up, put in the time, put in the passion, the energy, the grit. To pursue the next parts of his blues journey, which at this point, as you shared with us in the last episode, has to do with Jeff Beck. And I know we're going to talk about him in this episode. I know Eric Clapton's going to come up, Jimmy Page. Yeah. Anybody else that you think we might get to hear a little bit about?
I think I'd like to talk about like certain songs, maybe. Specific about some songs that I've been trying to use to teach myself. Don Felder and Joe Walsh of the Eagles in the Hotel California solo. Slash, I think, has also been influential. I as I play more, I tend to veer actually less hard rock than I started out aspiring to, but I still can't really stay away from the hard rock and the distortion and the fuzz and stuff. I'm really quite enamored with fuzz right now. I'm trying to learn how to play with it, make it sound good, but there's lots of other guitarists that I adore, but in terms of guitarists that have really shaped my playing in particular, I could listen to almost any accomplished guitarist talk about playing, just because, and even if I don't particularly love their playing, they're still devoted to the instrument, and I think, anyone who practices something and suffers with it, you feel a certain camaraderie.
Yeah.
Even if you don't particularly love what they do, or it's not to your taste, you're still practicing the same art.
Co-sufferers,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, where we're at now, we are past young, middle school, high school, even college Hunter. We have now entered post-college, husband, soon-to-be parent Hunter, I think, when this journey started, or was it even after you'd become a father?
Oh, yeah. It was after.
Okay.
I plateaued for a very long time. So, I could have started learning more many years ago, but...
Okay, so when the first gray hair started to appear, and the shoulders and the back started to go a little bit.
Yeah.
You realize you need to sit down a little bit more, take some time.
Yeah,
Blues more deeply entered your soul.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just wanted more tools, more musical tools, and I really have to shout out an older gentleman at my church who did a lot of playing in his younger years, with band, played out, gigged out, you know, very accomplished guitarist with a lot of knowledge. And he like just came up to me out of his own accord and had seen me playing at church and just started asking me about guitar and stuff. And I was able to get together with him a couple times and, you know, showed me some things and really just encouraged me, you know, which was like hugely validating for me because I didn't ask for any. He just saw me playing and heard me and just came up to me and was like, you know, you've got something, but you have more to learn, you know. And I still have so much to learn, but that was one of the, you know, I really have to thank him for that, and I do when I see him. And that encouraged me to just kind of learn, because, you know, when you learn enough of the blues scale, like I said in the first episode, you can sort of transpose it onto other, you know, genres, even on happy sounding music. You know, you can transpose, you can use the same patterns and licks and things and make it sound good and know enough of chords and stuff to just be able to play with it. And in practice, I would generally just kind of noodle. So, you know, but you can practice and not learn anything.
Yeah.
And so I just decided I was going to try and learn some new things. And so I started really just with actually going back to Paul Kossoff and just saying like, okay, I'm just going to try and learn my favorite solo of his by ear. Because I was really inspired by, you know, reading about Eric Clapton and most of our favorite legendary guitarists who learn just by ear. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to try and learn the Be My Friend solo by my ear. That's sort of the progression, you know, he was playing over. And I found that the notes were not that hard to learn. But being able to make them sound like him was so much harder. And the way I approached it was, I don't want to sound exactly like him. I just want to get ideas. And it was really, honestly, I think that has been one of the biggest things, is trying to learn things by ear. Has been so helpful to me, because in order to do it, you have to like try and get inside the guitarist's head, you know, because you can look up a tab or a YouTube tutorial or something that can tell you what notes to play. Mm-hmm. But when you're listening by ear, you know, you have to use your ear, which trains your sense for pitch and things. But you also have to look at the fretboard and sort of try and figure out what they're seeing and what they're thinking when they're playing the solo. You have to like get in their head. And it's so rewarding when you can figure it out.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm playing along with Slash as he's doing the Sweet Child of Mine solo. You know, I was able to figure out the slow stuff, not the really crazy wild things. But like, again, I couldn't make it sound like Slash because you can't make it sound like Slash. But you can figure out the notes and sort of get in the scales that he's using, and you know, I would be like, wow, I would never think of using that note in a song, and I also then I went to the Hotel California solo, which to me the Hotel California solo is, for me personally, it's like the greatest solo of all time, guitar solo. Not necessarily because it's the hardest to play or because it's the most impressive or it sounds the nicest or whatever, but just because it tells a story. And so many people that I talk to, and like when they can, even if they're not guitarists or interested in guitar at all, they listen to Hotel California and you're just totally entranced, and you're not waiting for the words to come back. You're just totally entranced by what they're playing, and it's not because you're so impressed with their super amazing guitar skills. It's just because they're telling a story and being emotional. And the notes, you know, it's not super difficult to play. It's difficult to play it like exactly in time and all that kind of stuff, but you know, the notes and the scales and things, it's not super complicated, but Walsh comes in. It just keeps going, you know. You can keep playing it in your head and, you know, hear it in the correct way, not the butchered way that I played it. But I remember when I was playing it, I remember very specifically the note where he goes, well, the beginning, you know, like bending here. I just wouldn't have thought of bending here, because it doesn't usually sound good.
Yeah.
Over that chord right here. But Don Felder is following the chords and the notes of the chords. And when you follow the notes of the chords, you can bend on things that you wouldn't normally think of bending on if you were playing in a normal blues progression or something like that. And maybe I'm just a novice blues player and I wouldn't have figured that out. But so that was one thing. But this note, the note here, that note, this is like forbidden. I would never put my finger here. Like, it just doesn't, you know, because the scale would be, and that note is right there. It sounds wrong.
Yeah.
And then he plays it again. He goes here and he bends up to it. But it works because it's part of the chord. And it just, the solo would not be the same without it. So, you know, little things like that where you just, that's where I am right now, is trying to learn things by ear and just, and it's helped. Like a lot of my playing, I play notes that I would never have played before. Or I do the thing where I bend up to the note, you know. Never would have done that before.
Yeah.
Several years ago.
Makes sense. You brought up the Hotel California solo last night to me, and I couldn't fall asleep because I was just hearing it in my head. Like, you didn't even play a single note of it. Now, every time I hear it from now on, I'm going to be thinking about the note bending, which I've never thought about before. Never once have I thought about, at that point he's bending a note. Just, no.
And bass players, you know, The strings are so thick. You can't.
You can. I mean, there are some bass players that can do things that I still can't.
Yeah.
Conceptualize.
I mean, yeah.
So
it's a never-ending journey.
Oh yeah. Hotel California solo.
Yeah. So another part of this is eventually I settled on Jeff Beck. I just
Yeah, tell me about Jeff Beck. Why Jeff Beck? What makes him unique? Or what makes him stand out to you? Why is he at the top of a mountain?
Yeah. So I never really listened to Jeff Beck before, like several years ago. And I don't really know why. He's not quite as popular. He was basically kicked out of the Yardbirds when Jimmy Page came in, and was really kind of overshadowed by Led Zeppelin. Even though Led Zeppelin was sort of inspired by some of the stuff that Jeff Beck was doing with Rod Stewart and his group. But I just decided to listen to him because I'd heard his name. I'd heard guitarists talk about him, guitarists that I really respected. Clapton talked about him. And Mark Knopfler did this, I think it was during COVID. It was, I'll link it in the show notes. It's this song where he invited...
Oh, I've listened to that so many times.
Basically, every famous guitarist you've ever heard of who's still alive to collaborate on this, over this, one of his chord progressions from one of his songs. And Jeff Beck does the opening lick on it. And it is such a distinctive opening lick. And it's just it sort of reconfigured my brain in a similar way, listening to Jimi Hendrix, just listening to the lick. And yet, the way Jeff Beck plays, he's experimental, he does a lot of things with gain and fuzz and wah and whatnot. But, not quite in the same super aggressive, crazy way that Jimmy did. But it's so emotional and pure, and yet, in sort of in a similar way that Paul Kossoff is, and yet Jeff Beck's playing, you can tell, is really influenced by a lot more than the blues, and he's using a lot more notes that I would never ever think of using in a million years, and yet he just makes it work and speak. And part of my problem, I like the right jazz and certain jazz. I think maybe partly we have a radio station I listen to, and sometimes the jazz sort of devolves into the saxophone player bludgeoning the audience with scales, which the right saxophone player can be absolutely amazing. But Jeff Beck, he's kind of jazzy. And he was influenced more, I think, by rockabilly than blues initially. It's sort of like country playing, like Les Paul. But the important thing to me about Jeff Beck is that he lived. Because Paul Kossoff died probably at 25, I think. Stevie Ray Vaughan died in a helicopter crash in his 20s. Jimi Hendrix died in his 20s. I think it was sort of drug related, but and tragedies. It's awful,
Yeah.
But apart from that, I think of what they would be doing now if they had kept playing. And Jeff Beck kept playing, and he stayed alive, and he kept experimenting. You listen to what he was doing in the Yardbirds, and you listen to his career, and he just keeps learning. He keeps changing and learning, and gets influenced by new things, and he just keeps practicing. And when you listen to him play, one of my absolute favorite songs that he does is he did this live performance at the Hollywood Bowl, and he does this song called "Scared for the Children," and he starts out with these like volumes swells. And then he turns on the wah, and then he goes totally in the solo section. That's a very two-bit impression, but it's filled with so much emotion, and if you listen to the lyrics of the song, you'll understand it's about kind of what our children inherit from us in the world that we've left them.
Yeah.
And in the solo, he actually pays a tribute to Jimi Hendrix, where he does the breakdown, and I think it's from The Wind Cries Mary. Which is paying tribute to Jimi Hendrix. And so, to me, it's sort of like Jeff Beck. He's absorbing everything. And you could say that he was behind Jimi Hendrix when Jimi Hendrix was alive. And yet, Jeff Beck kept playing, and he incorporates it. And, one of the things I love, to my knowledge, he never tried to, directly cover one of Jimi's songs or anything like that. Stevie Ray Vaughan did Little Wing. Stevie Ray Vaughan is another one of those virtuoso guitarists that people talk about a lot. But Jeff Beck had so much respect for Jimi, and that using that lick feels so much like a tribute to him.
Yeah,
and it makes me emotional, just and the theme of the song and thinking about the way that our notes that we play can echo through time past our lives. Jeff Beck's no longer with us now, and so along with that, I guess, do you have any questions?
You had said to me once, Hunter, that one of the beautiful thing about guitarists is that they age like wine as they grow older. You shared a little bit about that type of thing, just talking about Jeff Beck right now. I wonder if you could maybe speak a little bit more to what you mean.
Yeah. So I saw the Who. I was fortunate enough to see the Who on I think it was their 50th anniversary tour or something.
Okay.
Great experience. Roger Daltrey was still going, vocalist. And of course they did Won't Get Fooled Again, and the big, Roger Daltrey has a big note, rock and roll note, and vocalists, the vocal cords get old, and I usually find, older rock and roll gentlemen, they lived a pretty hard rock and roll life and was not kind to their vocal cords.
Yeah.
So, but guitarists, if they can keep it together and if they don't, the tinnitus doesn't totally take them over because they were playing at such loud volumes and stuff. And actually, Pete Townsend and Jeff Beck both had tinnitus because they would just, when they were younger, they just damaged their ears. But Pete Townsend was amazing. Just I think they did Eminence Front, and he was just all over the fretboard and just incredible to listen to. And I was fortunate enough to see the Eagles later. Joe Walsh was there, and it was just it was amazing. I loved Joe Walsh too. I haven't gotten into him quite as much, but the way that he bends notes. He'll bring up notes. His part in Hotel California starts with like. He can shape it up here.
Yeah.
That I can't do it like he does, and I'm trying to play. I'm like self-conscious because it's late and I don't want to wake the kids. But the amount of I don't know. I can't do it. Also, my wrist hurts because I strained my wrist opening a jar of salsa.
Life is hard. Life is hard. Again, you were just bending strings to show, in my mind, the guitarist would just continue to play the next note, not keep their fingers on the same note and bend the strings.
Yeah.
Like to get them... Just increasing tension, right? That's what you're doing.
Yeah, you're making it shorter.
Yeah.
Which raises the pitch.
Does it matter which way direction you go?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, Albert King, one of the Kings, I really should have mentioned B.B. King and Albert King and Freddie King, some of the most influential electric guitarists of all time. Albert King, I think, was left-handed, but when he learned, he learned upside down, because if you flip a guitar over, the strings are upside down unless you decide to string it upside down.
Yeah.
And they weren't really making left-handed guitarists when he was learning to play, so he played upside down, and a lot of his bends were he would bend down instead of pushing up. Usually, most people learn to push up. But I do it both ways, depending on how I feel. And segueing to Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck is really known for his use of the whammy bar, or the tremolo, and the particular sound that you can get with it. I don't have my guitar set up quite in the way that he could. He had it set up so that he could bend up. I have it set up so that I only go down, really. Okay. But it's very hard to use the whammy the way that he did, because he used it so precisely. He would bend down maybe 2 or 3 notes with it, and he would be able to hit them precisely. I'm trying to incorporate it a little more into my playing, just because it's a really... It has a really unique... Beautiful. A lot of people just use it for, like, it's called a dive bomb if you're playing something really like... When you go down like that. Sounds cool. Yeah. But, Jeff Beck would use it lyrically. Mm-hmm. And he would have he had a whole song that was built around like a whammy bar composition, like a melody, like a riff, and it's so beautiful. I think it's. I'm gonna link it in the show notes. I don't think it's because we've ended as lovers, but something else. But he would do things like he would hit a harmonic, which is when you just lay your finger across the 12th fret, and it just rings out. But he would hit the harmonic, and then he would use the whammy bar. And it's just so hard to use this precisely.
Yeah.
You know, it takes a whole nother level of practice, and similar to kind of, you know, learning to use the slide. I have a little bit more experience with the slide because I used to do some open tuning. But when you're using a slide, because you're not anchored with your pitch on the frets, you really have to use your ear to make it sound on tune. Because there's so much more variation. It's like, you know, if you just remove the frets from your guitar, which there are fretless basses and guitars, you know, violins are fretless and whatnot, but so the only thing I can really approximate with Jeff Beck's whammy bar sound is with a slide, trying to sort of make something like not even close to what his sound is, but you know, the whammy just has a whole different quality of note, and I don't think anyone will ever be able to replicate it, honestly, just because it's so hard to use the tremolo bar in the way that he did with the tone that he did. And that to me just demonstrates, like, the guitar is an incredibly fiddly instrument. You know, when you first pick it up, it's really discouraging because if you don't place your finger in the right place, you know, depending on where you place your finger, even behind a fret, it can sound a little bit off.
Yeah.
Or out of tune.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are really impressed by fast guitar playing, but fast guitar playing just requires, like, so much fiddling with so many minute details, you know? Mm-hmm. So the sound of it is, like, so much different than, like, what it seems to require to me is just, like, intense discipline and trying to get really fast and that kind of thing. And Jeff Beck, he just experimented because, you know, if there's no one else to show you crazy things to do with the guitar, how do you figure it out? You just play the instrument all the freaking time and try to, you know, figure out what sounds to make. Like, one of my favorite, I watched a live performance of his, it's live at Ronnie Scott's, where it's this really interesting, he plays with, like, a drummer and a bassist, and there's actually Imogen, he comes up and sings a couple songs, and some other people, but it's really, the camera work is really good, it's very intimate performance, and there's this one part where he takes the slide off, and he starts doing this over the pickups. But it's in tune with the bass and with the melody of what he's been playing. So much, takes so much practice and, like, just messing around to make different sounds. Yeah. And Jeff Beck was a big user of the Stratocaster, which is the guitar I'm playing. And that, you know, that's why he's at the top of the mountain for me. Because he just makes sounds, you know, in a similar way to Jimi Hendrix. he makes sounds that would never occur to anyone, to me or to anyone. And you know, there's shredders and really great guitarists who use, you know, metal guitars and guitars that are more set up for playing really fast. But in my opinion, they don't play with the tone that Jeff Beck does, because he still retains the honesty and the like width of tone and the weight of tone that like Paul Kossoff has. And yet he's also doing these really intricate things, and you watch him do the thing that he does with the Wayman bar, and it's almost like he's performing surgery on the guitar. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Hunter, would you take a minute or two and play us something in the style of Jeff Beck, something that comes to you, maybe something that he loved to play, or something that is...
I'll try.
mesmerizing. That was incredible. And Hunter, do you memorize that, or is that off the cuff? Where is that coming
No,
from?
that was improvising chord progression. I've been sort of messing around with the open chords. But the rest of it, the licks and things are mostly just trying to improv around the scale, lose notes. I was trying to throw some bends in and use the whammy bar a bit.
Yeah.
So hard to replicate the Jeff Beck.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I'll say one of the greatest jazz bass player I've ever known, personally. Shared with me that even in his 60s, 70s, he's playing and preparing for a solo. If it was a 10-bar solo, he would practice it 40 times. At least before. So that means he's played 400 bars before for a 10-bar solo.
Yeah.
Which, hopefully he's normally playing 32, 40, or more bars. And so much of, he was the type of musician that he could play anything he hummed.
Yeah.
He could just hum and just play those notes. He played a 7-string bass. It was phenomenal. You've met him. It was incredible. But the amount of blood, sweat, and tears, the amount of time, the amount of depth of passion that goes into it. And so in many ways, and this is what you've shared with us, your instrument becomes your voice in ways that words can't communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the other piece of Jeff Beck, is I discovered him at a time when I was sort of changing my amp setup. I wasn't super happy with my sound. I was using a modeling amp for a while that, I'll just say it wasn't the amp that was holding me back. But it was a time when I was sort of the social media, YouTube, gear reviews and things. You go on the internet and look for good amps, whatever. Very good at making you want more things and more fancy pedals to make you sound better. More guitars, more amps, different speakers, whatever. What was really inspiring to me about Jeff Beck is that he used so little effects. If you watch him play, he's doing almost everything on his guitar in the way that the sound changes. You can change, on a Strat, you have 5 different pickup positions. Les Paul, you have 3, he would change pickup positions. You have a tone knob, which makes the sound more bassy, rolls off the top end. So you can shape the sound that way. You have a volume knob. You can fade in notes so that you don't hear the picking. You can also do that with the pedals, like a volume pedal. Mark Knopfler would do that. Jeff Beck would mostly just use his volume knobs, his tone knobs. You have different pickup positions. So the neck pickup is generally more bassy, really beautiful sound, probably my favorite sound. But when you're playing in a band, you want a little more bite. The bridge pickup drives it a little bit more. And I have an HSS Stratford. I have a humbucker here, which Jeff Beck didn't have a humbucker there, but you can do similar things. And part of it coming to Jeff Beck after sort of having this, it's called gas gear acquisition syndrome, where you just want, you're gassing for all this gear that you want.
Sounds like you're in a video game.
Yeah. Oh, it's very, music is the original video game. But I came to Jeff Beck and I was like, he uses a wah, you know, to get the wah sound occasionally, to make it talk. He basically has like one overdrive pedal, or he like channel switches on his amp to go from clean to dirty, or he just uses the volume, because you can really control the amount of distortion with the volume knob if you set it up right, you know, and just the way that you play in the pickup positions that you use. Some drive it more than others. Like, I'm not changing anything on the amp. It's just all in playing.
Yeah.
And he would use some reverb and some delay to just fill out the space a little bit more, depending on where he was playing and how big the venue was. But, you know, it just totally, I won't say it cured me of my gas, but it just made me realize that, you know, brought the point home, because I think everyone knows that buying another pedal is not going to make you a better guitarist. But sometimes you just need to have it demonstrated, and Jeff Beck really typifies that. They had his wife like auctioned his guitars off. I think it was several years after his passing, and she said, you know, it was time to share his guitars. Clapton and Gilmour both did a huge guitar auction prior to that, and they had just huge collections. You know, they're rock stars, of course. They just, you know,
yeah,
so many guitars. You know, and I think, especially, I know that Clapton, I'm pretty sure he donated most of it to charity, but I don't know, Gilmour probably did the same thing, but they were well kept, you know, they had people who, it was a collection.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you have your money and what you know.
Right. And they did Jeff Beck's guitars, and I don't know if I think there were less of them, but they were all just played in, like heavily used. Whereas, you know, Clapton and Gilmour's, they had a guitar that was played a few times. Most of Beck's guitars were just totally used. Like, he would just buy them and just play them. He was just playing all the time, you know. And that was really inspiring to me. And it's funny because for the longest time, I really wanted a Les Paul, because my heroes, Paul Kossoff, Tommy Shaw, Slash, and Clapton played a Strat, but Paul Kossoff was like my guy for such a long time. I wanted a Les Paul, but this guitar was actually my wife's guitar that was gifted to her by her dad when my wife was learning some guitar as a teenager, and you know, she kept it, and we got married, and I ended up using this guitar. It's a Mexican Strat from like 2008. Not a super expensive guitar, not a super cheap one, but you know, mid-range. And I just never really could justify the expense of buying a new guitar, and this guitar was so just good enough that I never bought another guitar. But over time, but I still wanted a Les Paul. And so I look at this guitar and be like, oh, it's a good guitar, but I really want a Les Paul. And then over time, like, you look at a Strat and it has this like cutout on the back. It's thin. I could just play it for hours because it's so comfortable. The neck is like beautiful to play. It's so comfortable, but it's not too thin or too short for me. It just feels like a part of my arm putting it on.
Yep.
And over time, I've just, I got into Jeff Beck, and he played a Strat, was like his main guitar, because you could get such a diversity of sound from it with the tone and the different pickup positions and the tremolo bar. Most Les Pauls don't have a whammy bar. And so now I'm like, really, I love this Strat. I don't need... Of course, if I had the money and I could justify it and I had the space, of course I'd love to get other guitars and play them, but I don't need them. You can get the entry point now for a good sounding amp is, it's not really about money as much as it's about how much time you want to put in and experiment with it. And I've really tried to be inspired by Jeff Beck and not, using pedals to shape my sound so much as the guitar. And part of that is, letting go of the pick and using fingers, and so that's where I am.
Amazing. Well, this has been incredibly inspiring and a great learning experience for me. I mean, I've known you for many years. I've played a lot of music with you. We've talked about music, we've talked about guitars, talked about the blues many times. But we've never gotten the chance to dive into what's made you the musician, or the musicians that have made you the musician you are, or the storytellers that have shaped you and continue to. And I'm sure another 5 years, 10 years from now, you'll probably have a different top of the mountain. Your story will continue with your continual growth and the more you listen. Andrew, is there anything you want to leave us with? Is there any last bit of story you want to share before you close us out with something that is can communicate more deeply than words?
I'll try. I guess something I'm realizing now, and maybe this is an excuse for never being happy with my playing, and not being quite accomplished enough to demonstrate with covers and things exactly what how I want it to sound. But something I'm realizing is that what I value when I'm playing guitar or listening is not how technically good or knowledgeable the guitarist is, but what they're able to say with the tools that they have. And great playing to me is playing that moves you. And if you look at musicians and artists, people who don't play music, music is not just for musicians. In a way, we're sort of all musicians when we listen, because music is about what you hear and about what you feel. Mm-hmm. It's spirit, and maybe you think I'm an amateur, or you think you would never be able to do something like something I've done, but in what you've heard, but you don't have to do that. It's when I listen to a song and I try to learn it, I'm really just trying to figure out more tools to have and more notes that I might be able to throw in when I'm playing or something, to have more tools to express what I want to say. But all that really matters is if you can write a song that makes you feel something, or words that make you feel something. And I think some of the greatest bands that we know of, like, the Beatles or Bruce Springsteen, very popular artists who wrote music that means a lot to people. Lots of other examples. Blues musicians were not educated in a music school. They had probably one guitar and maybe like 3 sets of strings throughout their whole life. And yet they were able to create the music that has inspired rock legends, because they used their ears and their heart. So, with the electric guitar in particular, there's this sort of like samurai aspect to it, typified by like, the Steve Ray Vaughan approach, where you're sort of a slinger, guitar duels and whatnot, which very entertaining, takes a lot of skill and stuff. But at the end of the day, for me, that's not what it's about. And staying focused on saying something beautiful and important and that moves somebody, or can give them relief for a little bit from this world. I like to think of the blues as redeeming your pain.
Not just voicing it.
Yeah.